Hello again. I didn't notice much in the way of changes. I've heard that mention of Starbucks is one of the changes that was made in the series, and there is mention of Starbucks in this book. But the only real significant change that I could detect is one that I do not like, and that is on the cover. He has short hair, and that is not canon. In The Predator, he still has long hair. He cuts his hair at the end of. Um, Actually, I think he cuts his hair at the end of this book, but he might cut his hair. No, he's still got long hair in the picture on the cover of Megamorphs 1. So he doesn't cut his hair until the end of The Android, book 10. But here, he's got short hair. Or it's pulled back in a ponytail, but I'm gonna say it's cut short. And I don't like that because when the original cover was released, when that book was first released, and I saw it coming around the corner at Toys R Us. I bought The Predator at Toys R Us the first time around. His hair was long. My hair was long. I was a boy a little bit younger than the characters are depicted, and I liked seeing a guy on the cover of the book series that I liked with long hair, a male with long hair. I didn't register that his hair had been described as long in the previous 4 books the first time I read them, but I saw that it was long on the cover, and that was important to me. The same way that the Green Ranger in Power Rangers, Tommy, he had long hair. Radu in Space Cases, he had long hair. Marco in the Animorphs TV show does not have long hair. And Cassie does, which in the books she has short hair. But it's all, none of it really matters. It's just that's the one change from original publication to this one that I could detect, and changes are one of the themes, well, of Animorphs, but also of the point of reading these versions after having fairly recently read the originals. I mentioned in my last video that I never really, I remember the reveal at the end of The Predator, but I never really remember the plot. And I think that's because the plot is more of an Axe-centric plot. And I think on the TV show it was even an Axe episode where he's trying to get home. And in the TV show, I think he tries to build a spaceship, but in The Predator, the mission is they're going to try to fool a Yeerk bug fighter into coming to Earth unsuspecting, and then they're going to try to steal it so that Axe can use it to get back to the Andalite homeworld. And so they have to collect a whole bunch of stuff from Radio Shack. That's a reference that they didn't update. But maybe Radio Shack hadn't gone out of business. Has Radio Shack gone out of business? I haven't seen one in a while. But maybe in 2011, when the book was re-released, it had not gone out of business yet. But it was probably heading there. But anyway, they have to go to Radio Shack. They have to get a bunch of things. There's a great scene where Axe is going, well, this could be what Andalites call it, but it's a human thing from Radio Shack. And he just does that over and over again, and one wonders who might overhear him, but it's very funny to read. And then they have to sneak into Assistant Principal Chapman's basement to get a zero space transponder, which is the only thing that they can't buy at Radio Shack that is equivalent to something Andalites would have. And that is where the nightmarish ant sequence happens. Something that affects them for the rest of the series. They talk about the time we became ants and were almost murdered by an army of other ants because they were slightly different ants and they didn't like us. And that is mercifully a mercifully short passage text-wise, but like I said, it affects the Animorphs a lot going forward. But they do all of this, and they put together this radio thing for Axe to use to send a distress signal to the Yeerk mothership, and therefore they would get, is this distracting when I do this? Because I want to get as much of the lenticular appreciation, it's not really, as I can, but I also don't want to be too distracting. But so they send the signal. The bug fighter comes down, but it's an old signal. It's kind of like the opposite of in Return of the Jedi, where they have a clearance code with that stolen Imperial ship that they used to get to the forest moon of Endor, and when they're trying to get past, Darth Vader says, "Where is that freighter headed?" or whatever he says. "Where is that ship going?" And the guy says, is going to the moon, and Vader says, "Do they have a code clearance?" And he says, "It's an older code, sir, but I was about to clear him." It's the opposite of that, because they use this code that Axis is so confident is going to work. And then the bug fighter comes down, and one Hork-Bajir walks out, and they seem to have too easy a time overwhelming him, and they're about to commandeer the ship, but then a whole bunch of Hork-Bajir show up, because it was an old code, and Visser 3 says, "What, you'd think we don't change our codes?" I wonder if it's a nod to Return of the Jedi. Anyway, I also wonder if the fact that I think Visser 1's soldiers wear gold and Visser 3's soldiers wear red, and I wonder if that's a nod to Star Trek, where gold is the color that the command officers wear, and red is the color that the disposable extras wear, the red shirts, as they are known among Trekkies. If you're wearing red, you're probably going to die, unless you're Scotty. I think Scotty wears red. I'm not a Trekkie, I just have seen some Trek. But I think that's the rule, and so I just wonder if that's a nod, that Visser 1 is in command. She has the gold-colored ones, and Visser 3 is lesser, and therefore his are red. Let me just check to make sure I've got the colors correct. Yes, the gold uniforms are Visser 1, the red uniforms are Visser 3. And I think there's a reference to Geds in here, but it's confusing because Cassie says at one point when they're being chased through the corridors of the mothership, Cassie says that there are more Hork-Bajir coming, and some of the little wrinkly ones, but I don't remember, and maybe I just missed it, maybe it was a blink and you miss it passage, but I don't remember that there were anything other than humans, Taxons, and Hork-Bajir on the mothership. So I don't know if there were Geds, but I thought I detected when she said the little wrinkly ones. I don't know what else she might have been referring to as far as things that would be chasing them around at the Yeerk mothership. But of course, the point of this book is, because Axe's ploy does not work, is introducing Visser 1 and introducing her as Marco's reason to fight. Something that could finally give him a reason to fight. It's right there in the on the back of the book. It was in the advertising. Now he has a reason to fight, and that is that his mother, who he's presumed dead for 2 years. The book leads up to the 2-year anniversary of her disappearance. It turns out was Visser 1, and it kind of gets to a whole, Tobias didn't have parents, but now Marco is wondering, how long was one of my parents a Yeerk, just pretending to be my parent? Obviously, his mother was still there inside her head, but trapped inside her head because she was a controller. And so he's wondering, the reader is wondering, how much of that was a performance by a Yeerk, a very talented Yeerk. And we get into some of that in Visser, which I didn't like it as much as Andalite Chronicles or Hork-Bajir Chronicles, but I liked it more than I thought I would. Yeah, so that's the big reveal. Only he and Jake recognize that Visser 1 is using the body of Marco's mother, and that's a way of indicating their closeness. They've been called best friends throughout the series, but a way of indicating their closeness. Jake is the only one who knows Marco's mother, who would recognize her, even though she's been gone for 2 years. So there are those elements, and that's the story, and it introduces the rivalry between Vissers 1 and 3, and Visser 1's troops help them escape under Visser 1's orders to make Visser 3 look bad. And it's the second book in a row where they don't get out by their own talent, they don't get out by luck, they get out of the scrape that they're in, they escape because they are helped by more powerful elements, whether the whales in the message or Visser One and her troops in Predator. So that's a notable connection. It's kind of like there are other instances later on. I mentioned in a previous video that Megamorphs 4 is an alternate universe. Well, so is then book 41, and then whatever order they happen, Jake has a book where it's an alternate universe. He wakes up in an alternate universe. I forget exactly what that is. And Megamorphs 4 is either right before or right after that, and it is also an alternate universe. So and then there's a pair of books, it's a Marco and then a Jake, where it's essentially the same story about getting this close to freeing the family member from the Yeerk. But this and in both of those cases, I wasn't a huge fan of back-to-back stories being almost exactly the same idea. This one I didn't mind because it's early in the series and it demonstrates that they have their talents, they have their skills, they will get very good at this, but they're not quite there yet, and so they still need a bit of help. And then there was one other thing that I wanted to note about this, which is, again, something I wouldn't have picked up on very young, and apparently I didn't pick up on it when I first read, or when I was doing the whole series reread. When Axe becomes a human for the first time at the end of the message, but he doesn't spend much time as a human overall because he doesn't like it. But in this one, he becomes a human, and then I think it's the first time he goes out to do human things, which is to say goes to the mall. They have to go to Radio Shack and get the stuff. And he is distracted by the smells and then ultimately the tastes. And I just wonder if it is a commentary on human beings, human nature, or human vices, or if it's a warning against such things, at the very least, for children not to be like Axe. But Axe goes from being a very reasonable, if young and inexperienced alien, advanced by human standards, but still young, to be, as soon as he becomes a human, he becomes a glutton. And I fully acknowledge eating is great, food tastes great, but the way that he does it is so out of control. And in later books, he manages to control himself better. I think it takes him some time. But I just wonder if that's a commentary on this alien becomes a human, and with that becomes a glutton. So that's, I think, all that I wanted to say about the Predator. It is Marco's reason for joining the fight. He says late in the book, this is my last mission. He's thinking it's a mission centered on Axe, but it is actually centered on him. The book, the story is anyway. And he decides to stay in the battle. And it's a very... when I reread this, I thought the structure of the first 5, the introductions of the characters, very well structured. Marco was the right one to end with. Giving him a reason to fight at the very end of the first cycle was a great move. So yes, and even his relationship with his father kind of perks up toward the end and gives hope. So there you have it. Ram the Blade Ship.